So I just wanted to show you this first. This is this giant cat, and it's a program that I'll be talking toward the end of presentation. It's called Caldera. So I just thought I'd show that. It's an interesting photo. I have pretty much just one slide because the rest is going to be kind of looking high level overview of these topics. Let me see if I can bring that up. Okay, so tonight what I wanted to cover, and this kind of all relates to each other, is going to be the MITRE attack. We've heard that before, and I just wanted to bring it up again so it's kind of reinforced, repeated, and kind of you hear multiple versions because it's really important to get a good understanding of that, because you'll see it in multiple applications. And part of the MITRE attack, we'll see the ATT&CK Navigator. Next, we'll talk about the RedCanary Atomic Red Team, and related to that, it's called the RedCanary Invoke Atomic Red Team. And then we'll talk about Wazuh. We've seen that before, but again, this will relate back to the MITRE attack framework, as they call it. And then we'll talk about that cat and the MITRE, and it's called the MITRE Caldera program. So let me go to the MITRE attack. So this has been brought up multiple times as MITRE attack framework, and I wanted to go over it because when I first heard that, I didn't really understand what a framework word was in terms of reference to the MITRE attack, or what attack meant. So I just want to 1 second.
Yep, no problem. And while he's looking for that, just to kind of put some context why this is important, is that you typically, years ago, people always talked about the kill chain by Lockheed Martin when they talk about any type of cyber attack. Now you don't hear a lot of people talk about the kill chain because they're using the MITRE attack techniques and procedures to kind of talk about how attacks are flowing. So usually when I go to a customer, I will always talk about, yeah, here's the exploit, this whole thing going down the kill chain. But now my conversation has changed because the kill chain is like old news. It's like Windows 3.1, right? Everyone used the MITRE. So this is definitely top of mind. It's something that you need to understand, and people will ask you this indirectly or directly when you're in an interview.
Okay, thanks, Otho. Yeah, so I'm here at the MITRE attack page. So the first thing I was wondering if MITRE meant anything. MITRE is just the corporation. It's a non-profit corporation, and you can see their slogan here. So they do a lot of security for government, for they said public-private partnerships. So that's what MITRE is. So it doesn't stand for anything. It's just a corporation. So MITRE has put out this MITRE attack framework to help the security community, and what both had mentioned is the TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures. So the tactics are something you kind of can memorize, or these top ones, and they say what is basic definition of a tactic is the why. So why is somebody attacking a system? And so you get the why. Okay, reconnaissance. They want to do reconnaissance. Why they want to do initial access. Why they want to maintain establish persistence in your system. Again, the why. This is the tactics up here. Let me see if I can. I have to scroll all the way down, but to show you. But you can get that list. Let me see if I can. You see command and control is, again, the why. And then the techniques are basically the how. How are they going to establish reconnaissance? And you can see active scanning. Again, the why kind of makes more sense. And again, it was for me to understand what the terms meant and what they were trying to explain. So again, this framework is basically, you can consider an outline. of information for you to follow. So again, you have your tactics and your techniques. Now, one thing to note about the techniques is they have a number, the technique number. For example, this active scanning that falls under 1595, but you see there's, I don't know if you can see the screen. 2 means there's 2 sub techniques, and then they'll have a number. You can see .001 and .002. And then what this framework will give you, well, let me try to get back. Let's see if I can get back. I gotta scroll over. And then you can click on that and it gives you all the information, some of the details, procedures, ways to prevent that activity essentially, and then ways to detect it. So basically a reference guide. Again, that framework is an outline of a kind of a reference guide. Okay. So that's essentially the MITRE attack. Again, you have all these type of tests. Let me see if I can, I'll expand. Here we go, show sub-techniques. So if we expand, you can see there's a lot of techniques here. Cover the wide range of tactics. Okay. And again, for anybody on the, anybody, feel free to jump in with questions or others for comments if you want to add to whatever I'm saying. Okay, so again, this is the MITRE attack. Oh, and I forgot to say what attack stands for. That just means it's adversarial tactics, techniques, and common knowledge. That's what attack means. Okay, that's what it's short for. And again, it's those little things that kind of, I always ask, does that mean something? So I have a full understanding what that means and not confused about some terms. So again, the MITRE was just that corporation, and they developed this framework for the public use. And attack, again, is adversarial tactics, techniques, and common knowledge. And one thing about these, kind of why they say common knowledge, is because these are based on events seen in the wild, they say, that have been noted down and then and documented for everybody's use in the community. Okay, so that's essentially the MITRE attack. So what I want to show you next was the attack navigator. So let's see if we can go to that. So I'm going to go.
Excuse me, Rick, can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah, sure.
So this matrix helps you determine, like, so if we were to say that a system is compromised, we can refer back to this matrix and kind of follow the path of, like, when we're doing our research, figure out how it may have happened. This kind of helps give you a guideline towards by figuring that out.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of background information on these, and they describe. Let me see if we can find one of these. They describe known attack groups that use certain techniques, and well, I'll show you in a second. But yeah, definitely, and you can kind of categorize what kind of attack that was. So, but this helps you to understand, the type of things that attackers are trying to do, and then ways they try to do it, right? So yeah, and if you find something, it'll probably fit nicely into one of these categories. So let me go to the.
Thank you.
Sure. Let me go to the navigator here. what the Navigator lets you do is, let me do a new layer. Price. It's sort of like an interactive application. And so what you can do is, say you're interested in certain techniques, you want to outline them, or you have some kind of project, you're following certain, you want to cover certain techniques. But also, let me just show you this one thing. Of course, there's a lot you can do here. But for example, if we want to see the techniques used maybe to attack banks, we can search the information in here. Let's see if that limited. And you can look at the groups that and see what their attacks are. So let's see. Let's view that. I think somewhere in here it says something about banks. So this is a North Korean group. Yeah, here's banks. So these are the techniques that have been noted that they've used. You see all these numbers here. These are all the techniques that we saw, and then these were the sub techniques of those groups. So, for example, we can go. Let me go back. Should be still here. So okay. So I'll select that. That was APT 30C. Select it. Go down, close. You can kind of see they're highlighted, but I'll change the color so we can note them. But where's the color? Let's put a green. Okay. So what it did is from that list that we saw of techniques, it just highlighted them. So you have now you have a view here. And I forgot the name of that group, but we can then we'll have our own layer just specific to that group. APT, I think it was 30A. Was the name of the North Korean group. So you have your framework, but highlighting the one specifically for that what that group uses. And so if that's if that's concern for you, you can focus on what they've used in the past and seen in the past. And again, let's see. Yeah, you can hover over it and you'll see the technique number. You should be able to click on it, and well, we probably have to go back and see that. But then you get to you can save this for your reference. And of course, there's a lot more you can do, but this is just high level, kind of showing you interactive use of the ATT&CK Navigator, it's called. So, any questions on this?
Not a question, but this is a comment. So for anyone that's not used to using the MITRE ATT&CK framework too, I wouldn't say, and I couldn't get my mic to work until now. Hopefully you guys can hear me, right?
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Perfect. No. So two things, Ernest, your question from before, this is not something I would recommend you're using in an IR situation, because if you're working IR, you don't really care at this point. You just need to get those people out. You can potentially leverage this, like if you know where it's coming from, meaning like Rick highlighted brute force, like maybe they're hitting your, your web app gateway, and you can identify it as brute force and kind of look through there. But general IR, you should already have a plan that's already put in place inside of your company that is going to leverage whatever your process and protocol is for what you find. This is more particularly helpful, I found, in two situations. One is actually testing the infrastructure and alerting of an organization, meaning you can grab, and let's say you want to do network share discovery. There's Nmap scans you can do and a couple other Python scripts that you can actually launch to actually go out and do this type of an attack. And then what you do is you kind of take those and look at the TTPs from here and see, did your attack line up with those TTPs? If it did, great. And then the second question is, did your company or did your SOC or blue team, whatever you call it, were they able to find your attack, yes or no? And if they weren't, that's when you would partner with those folks to kind of run down and say, you know, hey, either we're not alerting because this person has access to it already, and then maybe that's the reason why, meaning like if this person was compromised, you wouldn't be able to see this attack because of A, B, and C. But essentially what it is to create some dialogue between your red teaming activity and then the blue team side. Now, the other thing that I want to caution everyone for too, I looked at this probably, I think for the first time 4 or 5 years ago. And I can tell you, working on the defense side, this is a huge thing to bite off. There's a lot of things you have to have in place to actually use the MITRE ATT&CK framework too. So don't get bogged down with, like, they have tons of stuff in here, and not to mention hundreds of sub techniques at this point. So if you want to memorize something, those big headers like discovery, letter movement, collection, those are the ones that you should focus on more than the actual techniques down the middle. Because if you understand the main, you know, those main headers, you will pretty much find everything else underneath. Those are just subcategories that are built inside of it. So this is a lot to bite off. And I commend Rick for going through this, because I don't even know if I would have wanted to go through this.
No, thanks, Nick. Yeah, that definitely, it's good to hear how you know, Ernest with his question and how that should be approached and how to use this. So thanks for that.
And I will say that's just my own opinion. Like, if you're using this some other way that you found effective to share, I just have not. It's so incredibly hard, especially if you're lacking tools or lacking coverage, to really take this whole map and really say, hey, I'm MITRE compliant. But I think for the most part, if you have the ones on top or you have some plans in place, you should be in a good position.
Definitely. Thanks, Nick.
And also just to add on to Nick's comment, that dealing with this framework, they also have mitigations as well. And the mitigations aren't necessarily step by step, but it's kind of like a general heading that talks through how to prevent some of these things. And so, you know, just trying to get a good grasp of that. So if you're going to an interview and you're interviewing at a bank, right, and Rick just went to that bank, then it's good to kind of go through to understand what a bank, the type of threats that a banks are looking at, and what type of techniques and procedures that successful attacks on banks have actually occurred. And then you can kind of build up a game plan in your head. Say, okay, if I ever interviewed at a bank, then these are the things that I need to know, because the last 5 banks, or, you know, whatever APT group that was actually being used, they use these particular techniques, and you can see that common theme.
Yeah, thanks, Otho. Yeah, and what you mentioned is kind of you said they mentioned like the mitigation, but in general, like, and that's kind of what you see when you go into this. It's general information, and it's like, okay, now, you know, how can I really use this? You know, how can I do these tests? And that's kind of what I was looking for when one of the meetings before, Al had mentioned, you know, about kind of knowing it all, knowing from the attacker side, and knowing how to detect it, and knowing how to prevent it. So from the red team, and then the blue team, right, and how to detect it. So that goes into our next topic. We're going to talk about the RedCanary Atomic Red Team. So what is the Atomic Red Team? And that's why I want to talk about MITRE first, because the Atomic Red Team is based off of the MITRE techniques. So let me see if I can bring that up. Thought I had everything organized somewhere, but okay. So the Atomic Red Team, this is on GitHub. What this is they basically give you a library of the actual tests to do, the actual commands you can use based on those techniques, okay? So that's the Atomic Red Team. So what they have is called the Atomics. So let's go in there. I'll show you here. So here again, we see the technique numbers, right? And that's why I want to emphasize before those numbers that we saw and kind of what they mean. So remember, the main one was the, you know, for example, T1003, and then you have the sub techniques. You have 001, 002, and so on. For not all of them have sub techniques, but that's what that means. So let me go to one that I know kind of understand. This was there we go, 1016, just be simple example here. So 1016, let's go into that, and we can go into the markdown files. It's the one that's easy to read there. And so this one is, zoom here. So this is the T1016 system network discovery, configuration discovery. So in there we had the sub techniques, and you can see the test here. So let's look at the first one here. So the first one here, atomic test 1, is based essentially these commands that many of us might be, familiar with. So for example, I can just run that on the command line. So that's basically on the command line. Run some of those. And so for example, we know the IP config, and this is not necessarily attack, but it's just kind of a basic reconnaissance that an attacker may do, right? So it's going to get all your IP information and MAC address and other things that they may find useful, right? So that's what a test essentially is. It's just a bunch of commands here. And so going back to the MITRE, I mean, they just referenced that this matches up to that framework, the T1016. And you can see that it just has this command, these commands that are run. And one thing to note too is they have different tests that will be for Windows, Linux, or Mac OS. You can see there. So in this, you can read through the tests, you can get the commands, and you can run them manually, right? So a lot of things you'll see here. Again, this one is Mac or Linux. Okay, so that's the atomic. Let me go back. The atomic red team. Basically, documentation, with the actual commands that you can run based off, and they're based off of that technique. And you can see, got a lot of them there. Okay. Any questions on that? And again, just for a little background, RedCanary is a security company, and they just created atomic red team for this, the security community. Everybody free to use, and also you can contribute if you'd like. Okay, so that's basically a file, documentation, but we want to get a little better. So we want to be able to use that a little more automated, find an automated way to use it. So what they created was called Invoke Atomic Red Team. So it's basically a program that will run those tests. Okay. So this is installed. You can do, install in PowerShell. So you can install PowerShell on Linux. So you install PowerShell on Linux, and you can install this Invoke Atomic Red Team. Okay. So let's go to. Let me go to my Windows machine. I can show you a quick demo. Okay, so it's already installed along with the folder, the Atomic Red Team. So let's do. So what we can do is, what you can do for all the tests is show the information, kind of like what we did at the folder. It's the same thing. You can read about it, what it's going to do, and show details. And so we see that same information essentially. So what so you can run it. So now, one reason you want to run those is because you want to see if you can detect those. And so what you'll do is I have this installed on Windows, and then on this Windows machine, you can be monitoring, activity. And so you take these tests to see if you can, detect them, and how far you can, get into the system and what information it can pull, but also, like we talked about before, being able to do from red team to blue team, so you can try to detect those tests that you're running. Okay, so this one was just showing you details for, we did test number 1. Let me go just do test number 1, that one we saw before. And right here, just showing what we saw in that previous one, right? Basically the documentation, right? But this invoke atomic test will actually run these. So all I need to do to run it is actually just do that with the test number that I want, and that will run it and spits out the information. All right. And of course, it gets a little more, complex. There's some tests that require like a file to be there. Maybe it's going to delete a file as a test. If you don't have it, it's going to say, oh, you don't have this file. But what's nice is that you can check for prerequisites. So you can check for anything that might be needed to run that test. Let's see, check prerequisites. So it'll tell you prerequisites met, because this one was pretty simple, didn't need anything extra. But there are some tests that you require, maybe a certain directory name, a certain file. It's going to say, oh, I'm going to take this file and delete it, or I'm going to move it or rename it. And it's not going to just take some random one for the test if you don't want, but it'll be specific. But what's nice is that if you don't have that prereq, you can do, let me see if I can get that. Oh, get prereq. And so if you don't have it, it's going to put that prereq in. So for example, you put a file, if you need a file in a certain directory, it's going to put it in there. And then after that, this may not do anything, but then after that, you can run your test and then have a successful test. So that's what's really nice about this. So this is, I guess in general, they call this an execution framework. And there's multiple programs out there that are basically execution framework types of programs. So again, this helps you automate the test a little bit. And what I'm doing right now is just local. I'm going on the local machine that I want, that I'm considering got hacked, and now we have the red team trying to do these commands to collect informations. But with this, you can also do a setup where you do it from a remote machine. You run the commands from a remote machine, and then it's going to affect your hacked machine essentially. So that's what's really nice, and you can run those tests and kind of semi-automate the procedure, right? We'll get into more of other programs that really automate the process, this kind of process. So any questions on this part? So again, we'll go to RedCanary. The atomic red team was basically the folder of information, the atomics. And then you install then, if you want to, have that program to trigger the tests, you do this invoke atomic red team. It's like the execution part of it. Okay. So now just one thing, going back, I'm going to go back. I'm going to take, they have, in the atomics, they have basically a listing of the tests that they have available. So I'm going to choose the one for Windows, just as an example. And we're going to go back onto the Attack Navigator and do that highlighting. And it'll show you what test the atomic red team has available for you to run for, let's do Windows, okay? So you go in there. Oh, did I pick the right one? Sorry, it was not that one, it was this one here. So for Windows, We'll go in there, you get the raw, click on the raw, get the link. And then we'll go to our attack navigator. This is our one that we created before. Let's create a new one. What we want to do this time is open an existing layer. You can see load from a URL. We'll put our URL in there. Hit that little caret. Okay, so now what we see is up here, you can see Atomic Red Team Windows. So these are the techniques that are available in that list for the Atomic Red Teams. So they've created those tests, and you can see what they match up to, what tactic they're under, and what technique they fall under. So you can see these are all the Windows tests that I have available in the Atomic Red Team. And we can do the same thing. Let's go back. What happened? Let's see. We'll go back and say you want to know about the test that they have available for Linux. Go ahead and click that. Click the raw. What you're doing is you're getting that link. And we'll create a new, we're back at the attack navigator. We're going to do a new tab and then open existing because it's a URL. And let me get rid of that just in case. Paste, caret. And now you can see up here, these are the tests that are the Atomic Red Team tests that are available for Linux. And you can go through them and get a good idea what's available for you for doing those tests that we kind of showed. And so on. They had a larger list you saw there too, but this is basic ones: Windows, Linux. So any questions on this? All right. So we'll go back to our list here. So we've covered the MITRE ATT&CK, the attack navigator, the RedCanary Atomic Red Team, RedCanary Invoke Atomic Red Team. And next I want to kind of talk about the Wazuh, and then we'll get into the MITRE Caldera. So I'm just looking at these two, our rat and our cat. Anybody think there's a difference between the two? And we remember we've talked about rat before. Rat was just a remote access Trojan, meaning it's a program that you get into your victim's machine so you can get control of it. And so they have something called a coordinated access Trojan. Anyone want to guess if there's a difference between these two? Okay, I'll let you guys think about it.
I'm going to say yes because the pictures are different.
Right. Yeah, essentially, it's just the pictures are different because it's the same thing. It's just that MITRE Caldera likes cats, so they referenced a cat to be this. But it's the same thing. It's a Trojan, but they like cats, and that's why that you remember from the very beginning of the presentation, it was a cat. That was just MITRE's. I mean, the Caldera likes cats, so it's exactly the same thing. Rat and cat.
So are you saying remote access Trojan, the method is the same? It's the cat is remote, but except for what is coordinated?
No, it's the same thing. They just came up with their own terminology so they could put a cat in there.
Oh, so is it exactly the same thing? Oh,
It's the same concept, yeah. It's just that I know you'll hear more rats. I know.
Yeah, that's what I'm familiar with. I'm familiar with rat. I've never heard of cat.
Yeah, cat is the exact same thing. It's just that Caldera folks liked cats, so they wanted to come up with something, similar to this concept, but finding a way to spell out cat. So
okay,
but it's the exact same thing, and we'll go into that. I'll show you. It's where you basically install the program on a victim's computer, and then gives you control of it.
Yeah.
But just in case you hear that, it's the same thing. It's just that Caldera, wanted to come up with cat. But I know everybody, because I think in the industry is more
Yeah, rat
familiar
is
with
like
rats.
what
So
you talk about a lot.
yeah,
Because we don't have enough acronyms as it is. We need more.
yeah. So
Yeah,
I just
right.
wanted to throw that out there so nobody's confused on, if it's anything different. It's just the same. It's just they like cats, so they found some
They just want
words
to be different.
exactly.
Okay. Yeah, gotcha.
Okay, so let me see if this is still active. Give me 1 second. Okay, so I'm going to show you Wazuh, and we've talked about this before, but again, it's still it's going to relate to the MITRE framework, the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So let me go here. Okay, so right now I have 2 active agents. So what this lets you do is monitor events on your network, your workstations. So I install, basically it's a program you put on a computer that will send back the activity logs to this guy here, to your Wazuh server. Okay, so let me open one up here. And you can see, if you remember some of the tactics, you can see some of them defined here. Let me just show you my setup real quick, just to have an understanding what is set up right now. Hopefully I didn't delete it. Okay, there it is. Oop. Trying to work with this free program here. Let's see.
What's your WAN IP? Don't answer that. It was a joke.
Well, that's a good point. I almost put it on here for my reference. So, okay, so just to show what I did, I mentioned I had 2 agents. So I set up a AWS instance, Ubuntu server, and I installed the Wazuh agent. So that's going to send the security information logs back to my Wazuh server, which I have on my local machine on a actually running under Docker, but under my Kali Linux VM. So my workstation, my Kali, is actually, this one's pretty straightforward to do Docker Compose, which we talked about before. But basically, it's multiple Docker containers, and then you can run your Wazuh server. So I'm running it locally, but I have this server sending me the information locally. And the reason I did that is because I wanted this open to attacks from the internet. So I have this being attacked, or not being attacked, essentially, but being open to the internet. So I can kind of watch the activity and see what happens. I also installed the Caldera agent. Caldera is running locally on my machine too, under a VM. You can see that here. And then I also installed that Atomic Red Team. Well, they invoke Atomic Red Team also along with the folders, just so I could do those tests and see what kind of security alerts were sent, detected and sent back. Because that was the whole idea, right? Of those Atomic Red Team tests, is to see if you can detect them. And then I also put the juice shop there because one thing I wanted to track too is, as you're trying to solve these challenges, what is your system detecting? What is your Wazuh detecting in order to alert you to something happening? Because when you're using this program, you can do scans, you can do brute force and that sort of thing. So I just want to see, is this program detecting that sort of thing, right? So yeah, I do have it. You have to open some ports to allow that communication. So I have some ports open, and so and I also have another machine, a Windows 10 machine. So I was just testing Windows. The same thing. I put the Wazuh agent on there, so I could do some tests, the Atomic Red Team test, and the Caldera agent too. And then this was to test, if I'm able to detect that activity on the Wazuh. So let me go back to Wazuh. And for example, let's make sure we're looking at the Linux that's open to the internet, the Ubuntu machine that's open to the internet. So one of the biggest things you can see is, let's go attempted to log, because you'll get that all day. Is the people trying to attempt to log in. You can see non-existent user. They're just using attempting all types of users. And you can see down here a little more detail. Attempt to log in using non-existent user, and you get more detail here. Okay. And you'll get IP information, port, where they're coming from. So now, again, why I want to show this is because they have a portion in here that has the MITRE attack. So you can kind of see where the attacks fit into in terms of, I'll go to the framework here, but again, you can see tactics that we saw before: brute force, checking, common ports, using, when they're in the system, using sudo. So let's go to the framework. So this is nice because, again, here are tactics that we saw before, and you can see, oh, these are the tactics that the detected incidents fit into, and then these are the techniques. So let me, so this is going to hide the techniques with no alerts, but these are the techniques that kind of it says it thinks it is, right? Brute force, network sniffing, common use ports, remote services. So let's see if we can get any information. You'll get some more information here about what brute force is, and then the actual log information. So that's why I put it, I have it open to the internet to see what kind of activity I get. And a lot of brute force, and I put that juice shop to see if anything else would be scanned or attacked or anything like that. So, but again, back to our MITRE attack framework. Here it is again, right? So definitely good to understand, good to know those tests, and good to know those tactics, techniques. So any questions on this? And there's a lot of other things you can look at. Sure.
So really, so do you have this whole thing built in the cloud, or you have some of this stuff like locally?
Yeah, let me go back to my diagram here. So this is locally, this is my computer right now, okay? I have the Wazuh server actually on my local computer, but I have it running a VM. I have VirtualBox, and I'm running Kali. And I just used that image to install Wazuh. Okay. And there's a simple setup you can do under a Docker container. Actually, it's a multiple container, so it's Docker Compose that you can set up Wazuh. So I have Wazuh set up, and what you do is you're in Wazuh. Well, first I'll explain. Then the one we just looked at was it's a server, it's a instance on AWS Ubuntu running that I installed a Wazuh agent. And the Wazuh agent is generated from the server, where it spits out a command, including the IP address that you need to point to, that the server needs to point to get back to the server. So yeah, I do have this one Linux server in the cloud, but the rest of it is local to my computer, just using some VMs just to keep it clean. I mean, it can all be local. I just wanted to put this one up here in the cloud so it could be open to the internet, open to attacks. But you can do it all local. Like I have it here. That's why I have this Windows server. I could set up. I could set up another VM to do Linux and install the Wazuh agent on there. Not an issue. and you can do all, those atomic red team tests on there and kind of get the similar results, right, of Wazuh detecting those security events.
All right, and so your local VM, it's on all the time in order to be able to communicate back with your cloud instance.
Yeah, when I want it on, yes, I have it on. I mean, it hasn't been months or weeks or anything. So just so far, like a week or so. But yeah, it's on to collect that information. I kept on my laptop for the last week to just get that type of graph, right, that we kind of saw. But this is only the last 30 minutes, so I'll have to see how far we can look back. But yeah, that's my local computer. Since it's collecting that information, I kept it on. You could install, you can install that in the cloud if you want, or all locally. Turn it on when you need to.
Pretty neat, thanks.
Sure. Okay. Wow, 9:30 already. So let's that's Wazuh. So our last topic, essentially the MITRE Caldera. So let me see if I have something here. Okay, Caldera. Okay, I just had a quick definition. I'll show you the program too. Let me see if I can bring that up. Caldera. Okay, so what Caldera is basically, it's essentially used for red teamers, but you can do, for blue teamers too. But essentially, what it is to simulate after you have basically, injected file that you can get control of the computer. What then, what tests can you run that will gather? What information can you gather after you're in a host, hacked machine? That's essentially what it is. So let me go to, again, the agents. So I have an agent still running on that Linux machine and the Windows machine. I won't go through it all. There's not too much time, but so what you do is you generate it, you create an agent. Basically, let me show you quickly. Let's say for Windows, for example. So you'll put that information of the the Caldera server that it needs to go back to, and then this is the command that you'll need to put on that host machine. So again, this program is to simulate after you have access to a machine, what then can you gather from that machine running different tests. And this test, basically, you can do, the idea is you can do, automated tests to gather that information. Again, based on that MITRE attack framework that we've been talking about, running those various tests. So let me see if I have something open already. I had it open before, but let's see. I'll just show you quickly because there's not too much time to kind of show you running. But essentially, this is called an operation. And I'll go through that, but to create an operation. But basically, this is after you run there's tests that run. So for example, this ran a test, couple tests. Let's see the information it gathered. So this is a command that it ran on that compromised computer. Again, going to give you information here. Let's see if the query register got something. Yeah, and that ran another command. Again, this Caldera, you get that agent on this computer, you're simulating a hacked computer. What information, what tests can you run and what information can you gather from that machine? And so you have that information then to available, and then you can do different things. Now this is there's a lot you can do with this because you can run tests and it'll learn from the previous test to run more advanced tests, to do a certain process, not only to gather, but you can, try deleting files. I ran one of the tests and it deleted all the files. Luckily, it was my I ran it on my VM, so I was able to redo it. But there's tests that will do things like that again to simulate you have control of the computer. What can you gather from it? What can you do to it? And then can you be detected? If you're interested in if you're able to be detected by the tests you're running. So let me go to nice one as the output. Where was the debrief? Yeah, so this is after the tests are run. Let me see that last test there. Let's see if it shows it. Okay, so that based on that test kind of shows you who it tried to run it against, some of the agents there. It has multiple agents that it tried to run it against. The tactic that it ran, you see, was that we call it Red 30. It did a discovery, and the techniques it ran. And the whole idea with this program is to automate things, because there's so much more you can do with this to automate and collect information. But this is giving you just information, basically, after you've done the attack. And there's just a lot here, but you can see some of the information it gathered. And then you can kind of see this is red, but you can then if you're, you want to be part of the blue team, there's blue team techniques you can do. So you see now it's blue. So you're kind of like on the blue side doing different things. And some of the operations you can do is, detect a malicious file and then delete it. So that was one of the operations. I don't know if I still have that saved, but that wasn't successful on those. But a lot of different tests you can do. And of course, you can do it automated, but you can also do it manually. You can go in and do manual commands and all sorts of stuff there. So, but again, it's great to do automation for kind of what we were doing with the Atomic Red Team, right? Instead of doing one by one, collecting the information, trying to decide what to do, this can kind of automate that process. Let me go back to the red. Well, I wish I had more time, but any questions on this? It's again, very high level of what we can do. And let me go to so they have that cat. Where's that first one? Yeah. So that's why, again, it was that coordinated access Trojan, which is the same thing as a rat. Basically, it's that configuration they give you to take control of that computer. They have a different one. Call it. So they like cats. Again, another type of cat that they've created. So, and again, it's just to make those agents. Those are agents that you install on a computer so you can have control. For right now, we have these. I have it active on two computers, my cloud machine and then my Windows machine, so I can do different tests. So again, it was all kind of related back to the basics of the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So I hope this gave you a good overview. I know it's kind of quick, but a lot of good information there. And again, this was kind of inspired by what Al had said before. He's like, why not just why not know all of it? Not just one side. The red teamers, the type of attacks they're using. Then the blue teamers, how are they detecting? So you have the ability to test different programs, security programs that are actively looking for those security events and see how accurate they are and see what works and what goes undetected, right? So those are things you want to be careful with and focus your attention on as things that are passing, these types of programs. And again, this Wazuh is just one of many. So, but that just happened to be open source and at the time, fairly easy one to install, along with Caldera is also easy to install. So one thing I want to point out too is if you can install this pretty easily and you get training, you can do training You can do this. I would recommend you start with this user certificate, and it'll take you through, different uh, things you need to do. And when you do accomplish them, they'll be checked off, so it does know when you accomplish that goal. And you can see it'll take you through all this, and then once you reach the end, it'll give you a code, and you email Caldera, and they'll send you a certificate of completion for this user certificate. And they also have this blue certificate that you can go through, a little more complex, but same idea. But I would recommend you start with this user, give you a good feeling of all the features, basic features you can do, and it'll guide you through those things, and you can get a certificate at the end. So any question on this or anything else? Because I'll wrap up with that.
Not a question, but just more. If you don't use, and I always get butchered the name, Wazuh at all in your org, and use Splunk. Splunk actually does have a cyber range you can use. They also have a free instance of Splunk that you can install in your infrastructure here. The one key crux here is if you're going to be doing testing on your corporate environment, you need to make sure you're in whatever subnet, or that subnet that you're linking to has the ability to see whatever you're going to be attacking, whether that might be some person's computer or a test computer. But those are other, some other considerations to take into effect too. You can also do it completely offline, just like Rick showed you here. And then, like I said, it just breaks down to what type of SIM you're using, and then how to malform or kind of spit those logs or that alert out based on whatever you use for that SIM. So you can actually do this stuff offline too. And if you want to learn more about that, I can help you guys out with that too.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Yeah, absolutely. Emphasizing that you can do this all offline. I just had that one, on the cloud just to see, what kind of activity it would see when open to the internet. But yeah, definitely you can do this offline.
Hey, Rick, I have a quick question. When you were in the ATT&CK Navigator and you put in bank, and then you did something to make it appear in red, change the color or something, or is that by default? Because I was trying
That's not by default, because actually when you do it, it bolds, well, slightly bolds the square, right, or the rectangle, so you can't see it too well, right? So let me show you. So yeah, you go do the search for your information. We did bank, whatever it is. We decided to do like a threat group, and we selected it. So now you can see right now, and it's hard to see when it first selects it. So I select it. You see how it changed?
Okay.
Right, but so let's it's hard to see that, right? So we want to give it a color. So go to the this icon here, this background color, and then we can choose a color.
Okay, gotcha. Thanks.
Sure. Yeah, because when you select it, it's hard to see. So it's almost like it didn't do anything, but you have to look close, and it actually did it. But yeah, I'd recommend using the colors. All right, so I hope that was helpful. Any other questions, let me know. I was happy to help and share information.